Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first of our 3 talks this fall in the Buddhist English Library. Let us begin our talk with reciting the mantra of the universe in its purity, Om Nam, 7 times. Hapchang, please. Om Nam. Just as it is, without thinking, and the Dharma talk is finished and everybody can go. But probably that would be a little bit of a disappointment. So why are we here for today? Why did we gather today? Because our intellect is hungry. We want to know. And that's actually the beginning of the path as we know it. It's really interesting that many books in this world begin with human beings somehow appearing in this world. But the real history begins when human beings want to know. We want to satisfy our desire for knowledge. And many religions, many philosophers, lately scientists, they all deal with this thirst of our thinking to know. So, if we go back to the Buddha's time, we don't have to give too many details to see how his path started. Everybody in this room understands that for 28 years he was living in the palace, and the start of the path for him was actually taking the trip outside the palace. Earlier we talked about the impossibility that he would not know birth and death, that he would not know impermanence, that he would not know old age, sickness and death. So he probably knew about it. He was a fighter. He was from warrior, caste. And because of that, he was getting ripe, slowly. And at age 28, his mind shifted. And he deeply asked this question, is there anything beyond impermanence? It was a very high-class question. Is there anything beyond name and form? Is there anything that we can call our I, our true self, which is not changing all the time, which is not following likes and dislikes, which is somehow above all that we can see, hear, taste, smell, touch and think? And this question was begging for an answer. This question was just transforming his life. And this transformation meant that he cut his hair and entered the forest, became an ascetic, practiced, attained enlightenment. So that's how his path begins. What about us? What about you? Do we see that we are on a path anyway? And this path is, as the Buddha saw, birth, old age, sickness and death. That's the default. That's what comes anyway, because we chose to take this body and we were born. So whether we like it or not, we are in this human vehicle. Our mind uses this body, and that's what we call sentient being. So we have a mind, we have a body, the two together is a sentient being. Believe it or not, many people on this earth are not aware of this basic truth. Most of us really do not know how we exist. Most of us really are unaware of this single timeline from birth to death. This is something that in the West we do not emphasize. There are many taboos in Western society. One is asking about your friend's salary. The other is talking about death. They never do that. We would love the lights on. Thank you very much. So, These are one of the taboos, and of course, even if people started to talk about it, it wouldn't make much sense. They wouldn't be able to change it. But at least there would be an awareness. If you think about the way we experience this universe, we have 3 dimensions in space and only 1 dimension in time. So 3 dimensions give you plenty of chance to move. You can move up, down, left, right, back, forth. If you want, you can make a U-turn, but make it in the right spot, otherwise the police catches you. You can even move around in a circle or make a globe and move on the surface of the globe. That's what 3 dimensions give you. But you cannot do that with time. You cannot reverse time. You cannot bend time while you are in this body. So that's what gives us our limitation. We call that impermanence. We cannot transcend that as we are in this body, sentient beings. So what did the Buddha and the patriarchs and the great teachers find? They found that we have something which can transcend life and death. We call that Buddha nature. And if you begin your path, which is not about going around with life and death, birth, old age, sickness, death, rebirth, old age, sickness, if it's not this round path, then the straight path is going beyond all this. That's what the Taoists termed as the way or the great way. And in Buddhism we also talk about that. So the path, the straight path, begins with trying to transcend all this. Ask yourself, what kind of path are you walking on? In other words, what is the direction of your life? What you want, you get. But what is it that you really want? That is the question. So if you find that you get things that you don't want to get, then look very closely, because you may not know exactly what you want. You may put your energy to directions which you are unaware of. And that's why people live many times in ignorance. Ignorance does not mean the lack of knowledge. Ignorance actually is sometimes the excess of dualistic thinking. We think too much. We are attached to this thinking too much. We believe in this thinking too much. And then this dualistic thinking controls us. The funny thing is that we make it. We ourselves make it, moment to moment. And largely, we are unaware of it. This introductory, this talk, this teaching may sound very simple. But this simplicity takes away all the other projections, all the other ideas that people want to take refuge in, but they cannot. Most people on this earth believe that there's another being controlling them. And whatever they call it, they want to depend on that projected being. And if they really want to take refuge in that projection, they find that they cannot. When we talk about refuge, we really talk about entering the path, which means start the process of realization. It's very clear, it's very observable, yet it is not scientific. It is not philosophical. It is not psychological. It is deeply human, but very simple and very clear. So where does the path begin? The path begins at the time and the place when you ask your first question. The Buddha asked the first deep question, as we know it from the history of his life, when he talks to his cart driver. And his cart driver is the person to make a dialogue with. And he asks him, Channa, are kings also subject to birth and death? Yes, my lord, they are. Are kingdoms subject to rise and decay? Yes, my lord, they are. And he says, I don't want to be a king, I don't want to rule a kingdom if I'm subject to all this. Rather, I set out on a path which goes beyond life and death. So he did that. That was his question. And if you want to acquire that question, you may do so, but it may not be all yours. So the most important thing is find your own question. And if your own question right now is how do you make living the next month, then that's your question. It's not a small question for many people. How do you make ends meet in 2-3 months or in half a year? How do you keep your job? How do you keep your family together? If that's your question, then deal with it. The Buddha cleared all that, you know, because he was born into the place he was born. He was born as a being, he was born. He was born as a very high-class being. It's very good. It doesn't mean that we cannot ascend to that level where he is. We all can. In fact, he was teaching us that we all can. We just have to practice. But start with your question as you are right now. That means look inside. Look at your situation. Look at your surroundings. And if you ask the question in the right way, then the answers will come. Then your duty will become clear and you can do it. No one has to tell you from the outside. So the path begins with a question. And no matter how small that question may seem to you, keep asking. Because if you ask the right question, then the answer comes. And you may clear these existential questions very, very quickly. Maybe in a matter of weeks or months or 1 or 2 years. So if you're married, you have to put your children to school. You have to let them grow up very, very well. Then that's your job. But you can always ask, when that's clear, more and deeper and more far-reaching questions. So start with where you are, start with who you are. So if you look at yourself sincerely, you'll find the starting point very easily. And one question brings a solution, and another question brings another solution, and another question brings another solution. Go step by step. And then you can arrive at the great question, which is, at that time, truly yours. You finished everything before. You have no regrets. You don't feel you missed anything. Okay? Because when you ask a question and you get the answer, you want to experience something and that experience comes in. You know what you got. And you were honest, you were sincere, you really did what you wanted to do. And if you find that that's a question you don't want to ask, then don't ask that. If you find that this is an experience you don't want to experience, you don't do that. That's what we call keeping your direction clear. Simple? Hope so. Human decisions are very quick, you know. We talked about the structure of our consciousness many times, but let's repeat it just one more time for the sake of the new audience. We have a very interesting setup in our whole being, not just in our head and our physical senses, but in our whole consciousness as we are. It's very easy to see the 5 physical senses, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. This is the instrument of touch. And then comes the thinking mind. Above that, the discriminative mind. And above that, the storehouse consciousness. So we have 5 physical and 3 non-physical senses. These are the 8 levels of consciousness. Okay? Now, when we make a decision, all these 8 completely and 100% cooperate. But how clear are they? Look at yourself sometimes. Your emotions cloud your thinking. You cannot think clearly because your emotions are so strong. I really want to cooperate with him, but I want to kill him. So it's like that. Sometimes your thoughts are stronger than your emotions. And then your thoughts freeze it. Becomes cold. Becomes very square. And it doesn't flow. You know what I mean? Everybody knows. So how do we reach a balance among the 8 levels of consciousness? How do we perceive them? We should remember that our Buddha nature, this clear mirror consciousness, is beyond any sensory perception, and it's beyond also the 3 kinds of thinking. That means that your Buddha nature has no number among the 8, but is perceiving all the 8. Remember that. Sometimes people meditate and they have these super memories. It comes in and they remember many things. Also, they can see sometimes things that are yet to come because they transcended this linear time which I mentioned before. Still, all these appearances will disappear. Still, all these phenomena are not your Buddha nature. It's the function of your mind which is gradually clearing up, clearing up, clearing up. But none of these experiences are your true self. Okay? Then it helps you get rid of the bad stuff, something you really don't want to remember. It helps you become free from the good stuff to which you would be attached to. I saw this, I heard this, I experienced this, I remember this. All that is impermanent. All that is subject to cause and effect. All that has no existence of its own. So, that's not what we are looking for. So the path continues. The path is very interesting because once you start with yourself, but you realize it ends nowhere. It has no end. You can stop practicing. That's your choice. You will see the response. You know, there's nobody punishing you if you want to stop practicing. But sometimes, even though you may not want it, you take a break. I'm too busy, you know. I'm too busy. I don't practice. Then the quality of your consciousness starts to go down. More clouded, more dusty. Then the decision-making, which we started to talk about, becomes less accurate. Then mistake appears. Your mistakes are the best teachers. Especially if you digest them and you transcend them. Then you are a more mature practitioner. This more mature practitioner is very, very valuable. All these experiences you get on the path as you practice day by day is more important than these flashes, than these shooting stars. It's definitely more important than any kind of Dharma speech. Okay? That's what you can get if you practice daily. Don't think about a big suheng, you know, as a family person. Put in just 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the evening. You will see over time what difference it makes. It makes a huge difference. So when you make your decisions, your clear Buddha nature can reflect all the 8 levels of your consciousness. And then you can make correct decisions. You can keep your direction very correctly. Sometimes when there is a fight, people really lose sight of the original purpose, of the original objective, why they started that kind of interaction, that talk, that work, that cooperation. And in the heat of that fight, in the heat of that anger, much is lost. Lots of good relationships can burn up. Same thing happens with desire. When people get too much into this interpersonal fire, then they cannot work together anymore. They cannot cooperate anymore. Even families can have a problem if either one, anger or desire, are in excess. Then the balance is lost. So the path, especially when Mahayana later formulated the middle way, is not something boring which you have to walk on, you know, step by step, always the same practice, the same life, the same. No. What's really interesting is when you start formal practice, which looks pretty boring, you know. My parents looked at it when they were here in Korea 12 years ago. They looked at the Kyoche schedule, the Ango that we do. They said, "Oh, my son, I cannot believe you do this for 90 days. It looks so boring." And I said, "Dad, you know, you may look at this schedule from the outside, and you've been working in your lab for 40 years with the same people, roughly, with the same microscopes. And I really respect that. But just from the outside, please don't say it's boring. I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, I was never bored for a single moment during meditation." So he said, "I cannot imagine that." So the path is not something boring because it gives you the opening as your questions grow, as your questions mature. It gives you the opening, the clarity, and the courage, the endurance to move on and see what's inside. And there's an interesting equation. As much as you explore of yourself, as much as you process of your karma, to that extent you become free And to that extent, the outside world cannot control you. Whatever you haven't seen, you haven't processed, or you lied to yourself intentionally, to that extent, in that area, the outside world controls you. So if you have a problem which seems to come from the outside, look at the inner equivalent. What kind of karma is it that you are still holding? What kind of karma or mind it is that you are still attached to or identified with? Because that's where the universe hits you. If you're a family person, that's where your children hit you. Right? Of course. Of course, children are amazing. Because unless you have another teacher, your children are your teachers. So, when you walk on the path, there are three very important elements. One is the great question. We talked about that. How you start and how you mature your inquiry into this real great question. What is this? What is this life? What is this death? What is the substance of all this? If you're bothered by the sirens outside, where does that reaction come from? Does your mind wander off to the probable reason why it's going on? Whether it's fire, some crime, some demonstration? Is it related to some visit here, etc.? Or does your mind stay here? Does your mind reflect, unmoving? So moment to moment, keep the great question. Then next comes great courage. This great courage is to pursue the path, to keep walking on the path, whatever happens, whatever you see inside. Okay?
And the other, besides this great courage and great question, is actually great compassion, which has to come towards the others who are walking on the same path, in their own way, in their own boots, with their own problems, so that you would never feel alone. And if you see that there are many people walking towards the same direction, you can share the effort. That's what you are doing right now. Listening together, and maybe later eating together. You like that? Or even maybe later practicing together.
Yes.
Or even working together. Who has done the Kim Jong? Hands up? No, not so many. Still Kim Jong has to come. So, necessary for the winter. Very good. So think of the path as something simple which cannot be really talked. It has to be walked. So you may hear some encouragement, and you may even read some books about it. But if you don't walk on it, it doesn't happen. So walk on the path, and the primary step is actually some practice which you put into your consciousness every day. And that is something that I can definitely encourage everybody to do. We have many wonderful teachers. Find one and study, then independently, from time to time, revisiting the teacher, and then you can progress. And that progress is yours. No one can take it away. Also, no one can give it to you. So if you earn it, you get it. Okay? You can put it into your Dharma bank. Okay? And from that bank, at the time of big trouble, at the time of conflict, or even at the time when you have to change body, you take that Dharma energy and you can still stay clear. Have you noticed how much energy tolerance takes? That you have to tolerate somebody. That you don't open mouth, you would want to shout. You don't open mouth, but also you don't want to suppress. So you just stay unmoving and you don't make anything. And you don't react. You know you are right. You know 10 times you are right. Yet you don't follow this self-righteous mind. And you stay clear. Now that takes a lot of energy to stay unmoving. And because of that, this Dharma energy is clear inside, this clear mirror, clear unmoving consciousness, very necessary. So our Chamson Gulgyo may not seem so eventful, but in times of trouble, wow, it's very precious. It really comes well when you can choose the right path, because your dualistic thinking cannot control you. Okay? So much about the beginning of the path, and now if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard Susan Kusumi once said that this time and modern, especially this modern age, when if Buddha comes to this age, and if he chooses to be Yamashijo, that it won't be smile, it will be tears. Did he actually say that?
Yeah, he said that.
Can you tell us more about it?
It's complete as it is. I can comment, but if you really look at it very clearly, it's complete. So Sumsan Sanim actually said that if the Buddha appeared now in this world, he wouldn't give transmission in the way he had given it to Mahakashyapa with that flower, and then Mahakashyapa smiles. The Buddha would be shedding tears. And a careful reflection on this sentence is that just look at the amount of suffering that we have experienced as a species in the last 100 years. It's unthinkable. So before 100 years, this world was very, very different. The human mind was, of course, potentially the same, but the manifestation of our anger and desire was not so severe. But in the last 100 years, we made so many wars, we killed so many humans and non-humans, we've done so much damage to ourselves and this planet, that the adequate reaction from anybody at that level would really be tears. So that somehow people would understand or feel, because this understanding is no longer available, that they would feel, that they would have rather some compassion than just some kind of cold understanding. Because in the olden days, knowledge used to be enlightening people. Now that you can get everything from the internet, knowledge is just filling the cracks. So the information revolution was necessary, of course, because people wanted to have access to information. And the free speech and the free right to information is also necessary. But look what happened. Trillions of books were printed, trillions of web pages appeared. Where do you find the knowledge which helps you? It has been diluted. So this understanding no longer helps. You have to be lucky to find some kind of doctrine, some kind of teaching which actually helps you, and not just wants to control you or manipulate you. Right? So because of that, understanding is insufficient for most of us. And then somehow having a heart-to-heart connection with the rest of humanity or with other beings is more important at this point. Okay. I would like to bring a parallel. There was a Russian writer called Dostoevsky, and he wrote many, many interesting and sometimes heartbreaking books. And one of them, which is truly a clear depiction of humanity at the end of the 19th century, was the Karamazov brothers. How many of you have read that? That's just pretty good. Now, it's a very long book, so that's not your homework today. But at the end of volume 2, it has 3 big volumes. At the end of volume 2, there's a very interesting part which was sometimes separately quoted, because it stands alone also as a long story, not as a novel, it's a story. And this story takes place in Spain. And in Spain is the 15th century Inquisition time, very strong religious rule, and Jesus reappears. And he gets, of course, captured, incarcerated, and he's awaiting trial by the Inquisition. And the great inquisitor recognizes him. He goes into the cell and talks to him. So the part which is separately quoted from this book is called the Great Inquisitor's Monologue, because Jesus doesn't say a word. But at the end of the monologue, he does something. And that's your homework to read. He does something which is relevant to this shedding tears. Very much parallel. I'm saying this, that there are other minds. They're not called Zen masters, but they're very sensitive and they're very perceptive. And they're also troubled. Dostoevsky was a troubled person. But he perceived something and he put that into this book, and that produced a gem, a real treasure of literature. We need to understand that in the Western Hemisphere for centuries, art, including literature, music, painting, sculptures, etc., carried such values that were not carried by anything and anyone else. Art, in that sense, had revelations to human beings which were not available from any other source. And that's why these artworks were born. They were not created for entertainment. They were created for enlightenment. For that kind of enlightening experience, to look deeper inside and find out what we truly are and how we operate, especially with our emotions. So please, find the Great Inquisitor's Monologue. Read it and see what Jesus does at the very end. And remember that. Okay? So that's why. Our minds are overloaded. Our understanding is diluted. Most of our thinking is unclear or junk. So people wouldn't understand, wouldn't perceive, wouldn't attain the flower. So some other channel is necessary, some other frequency. And that's why the heart is being used. Okay. More questions? Yes.
I just became an elementary school teacher 3 months ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I really, every day I'm surprised because they're really innocent and pure.
Are they?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
have
but
some special children.
yeah, but sometimes they make me angry because they don't hide their mind and thinking. And sometimes they say your class is so boring, and sometimes I cry. And my question is, how can I understand more these amazing beings, and how can I be a better teacher for them?
Let me ask you, when you have a class, do you prepare for the class?
Yeah.
I assume you do. And when you go to the class, you try to deliver the teaching 100%. Is that right?
I'm trying.
Great. So then, how much space do the children have to ask questions during that class?
No question.
That's the problem. You know, I tell you a little trade secret from my previous life. Because before becoming a monk, I was at university and I was studying and also teaching a lot. So I taught elementary school children, age 12, 13, age around 12 or 11. So hardest puberty, you know, they just begin to understand what is growing up, you know. And it was nearby the place where I lived, and it was an elementary school, about 12, 14 kids, English class. And of course they had to be motivated. We had a playground, and it was the spring semester, and there was a playground nearby the school, and everybody wanted to go out. So I said to them, okay, you do your homework well. They were sometimes lousy. If you do your homework well, and I check it with everybody, the next lesson we go to the playground. And what happened was that everybody did a super homework. They just wanted to make sure that they get there. So I checked the homework. Everybody's in flying colors. Then I asked, now what? Then of course they started to say, and then later shout, let's go to the playground, let's go to the playground. And then it became really loud. And then I really don't know what was it that kind of governed my method at that time. I just let it happen inside and see what happens. It's really important because you can't prepare for everything. Sometimes you have to improvise. But the basis for this improvisation is the connection with the kids. So I said, excuse me, I cannot really hear you so well. And he shouted even louder. Excuse me, I really cannot hear you so well. This has been going on for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. I mean, it was so loud that from the other classroom, the teacher, the experienced Hong San-min, came ahead and knocked at the door and says, my young colleague, is everything all right? And I said, thank you very much, sir, for your assistance. We are perfectly all right. So he goes out, shouting continues. And then one girl, who was the sharpest of all, he says to the others, hey, you stupido! He can't really hear you because you're so loud. And then, and only then, the others say, so teacher, can we go to the playground? I said, now that you're asking, of course. So this was nothing too big, but it kind of gives it a spark, the first kind of taste of improvisation, which I know is not customary in the Korean education system. But children are not to just repeat things, especially in elementary school. So the teacher's job is A, perceive their energy, what kind of energy they have on that day. And that modifies your approach. You still teach the same thing, you still deliver the same material, but how? You cannot examine them. Okay? That means also that you cannot do your teaching as if you were taking an examination before the children. So kids, especially at elementary school, they are not about just like a machine type of output. They have to be motivated, and you have to be motivated too. And after a while, you realize that the most important technique of teaching is not written in the books. It's born in the moment when you enter the classroom. And in your mind, you completely have to accept them. Otherwise, there's an invisible boundary between your space and their space, your mind and their mind. So you require, as a teacher, that they pay attention to you. How much attention do you pay to them? That's exactly how much you're getting back. Right? So during that English semester, those kids talked about their dreams, talked about their likes and dislikes, talked about whatever they wanted, but they used English, and I corrected their mistakes. I bet and I guarantee that they gained so much during that time. Sometimes we were not attached to the curriculum, but we always were feeding it back to the material of that day. So, have the courage to take detours. Have the courage to actually listen to them, because then they will also listen to you. Okay? And sometimes you have to be tough. But this toughness has to come actually out of the love for them. So if you get angry, you lose. But if you're tough, they will respect you. There's a difference. Everybody understands that, right? So don't try to be too good teacher. That kind of idea of perfection will give you a lot of hard time and without any positive results. So the real question is not how can I deliver the material perfectly. The real question is, what is it that can open these little children's minds? You see the difference? And for that you don't have to be perfect. Perfection is an idea. You have to be perceptive. And if you perceive, you will ask the right question. Some kid comes in with eyes like this and you say, Young-soo, not so much sleep last night, huh? Things like that. And they say, oh, Song-san noticed what I did. Or somebody is just crying her heart out, and then you can ask, hey, who broke your heart yesterday? Things like that. So that means you have a kind of human approach instead of just trying to fill some information into their heads. So I think this kind of gives you a taste. And for that you have to have really the courage. For instance, there was a methodological class still at university. This happened during university. The teacher wanted us to kind of handle difficult situations, so they created some kind of theoretical problem, which never happened. But actually, they wanted us to handle it as young, teachers just about to receive diploma. And the problem was, in a simulated way, that a kind of undisciplined child, a student would come up to the teacher's table, and as you are about to ask yesterday's homework, he tears up your classroom diary, where you have all the names and all the marks, and every class has a diary, and then the teacher uses it. And then they wanted us to actually simulate this and do something about it. And then the standard answers were, I would punish you. Or some female candidates said, I would actually run out of the class. Or some others said, I would really shout at him. And again, by then I was practicing Zen, so I was trying to use my clear mirror consciousness. At that time I said, if he tears up the classroom diary, I would go to his desk and tear up his best book. Why would you do that? So he should feel the loss. For him, tearing up the classroom diary is not a loss, it's a gain. But if his book gets torn up, he feels the loss. And then, my teacher was also smart. And after that, when the guy confronts you, what would you do? And I said, of course, I would ask him a question. What kind of question? I said, would you like your book back? He said, yeah, of course, you just tore up my book. He said, okay, I want the classroom diary back. Then you get your book back. Okay. So, plenty of chance, proceed with caution, care, courage, and compassion. All begin with C. That's the real C4. Caution, care, courage, compassion. Okay? More questions? Yeah, Virginia.
I think I'd like to know about the relationship between sensor and the mind. In general, we think about our sensor, listening or taste or some smelling, but there's no discrimination between goodness or evil. But when we process the listening, then we decide whether this was good or not. I don't know, in human mind, there is three kinds of mind. Sixth sensor and the seventh, Alena Pigiana, and then eighth. But in the case of, we'd like to think about our sensor's quality. Smell, somebody can listen and very qualified listening. So discriminate, this one is very high level music, this one is very classic one. And but the others, just they hear about the walking or some hammer, and very rough, tough listening. Sometimes we think about qualified listening or a high level, the sensory perceptions related to the higher level of mind, or it sometimes become enlightenment. What do you think about that?
Eugenie, thank you very much for your question, which was actually three questions if you observed very carefully. So first is hearing soft and hearing hard. But that depends on your hearing consciousness. So if your consciousness is very sensitive, and even you hear just a little noise, like the wings of a bee, you already see it, hear it, perceive it, and that's enough. You're not yearning for more. So when people have a thirst for noise, for very hard things like hammer or heavy metal music, etc., etc., that doesn't come from hearing itself, it comes from thinking. Okay? It's related to thinking. Usually this kind of rough noise or rough music, if people want it, not just tolerate it, but if people want it, it is supposed to suppress some kind of thinking. And when you have no thinking and also not so much desire for thinking, then you are fine with silence. Most people cannot tolerate silence, if you notice. Or just very subtle sounds or very subtle noises. And that's fine. So, our senses, and I'm getting back to the beginning of your question, our physical senses and our thinking and feelings, they are completely wired together. And that's why we can use the sense of hearing as Avalokiteshvara or CASN BELS to get to the very bottom of our existence, like a nice concert. So then, your sense of hearing, when it turns inwards, you perceive what is it that hears. And at the same time, you use the sounds to stay in the moment. So it's an excellent practice. So attain this moment mind from the sound of your environment, but also perceive, attain, what is it that hears it. It's very good practice. That's where actually Hwadu practice brings you. Because after a while, the question, the Hwadu disappears, the question remains there. And then you can perceive the sounds as well as anything else, 100%, not moving. Your thinking doesn't control it. So your thinking doesn't say too sharp, or too soft, or enough, or too little. All this is thinking. Just hearing. In that case, it doesn't matter whether there's silence or whether there's some sound. That's what you can get during meditation. It's completely even, clear consciousness. So any kind of question on hearing is very important because it really points to our original practices, Kwan Se perceived world sound. Okay? So if you perceive the sound of the world, that means you don't have to have 600 channels going on at the same time. Just whatever is in the world right now, whatever is around right now. Okay? And that helps you stay in the moment, and that helps you turn your attention inside. You don't go out for the sound. You really turn your attention inside, keep your center clear, and then the perceiver, whatever it is that hears the sound, becomes yours. And then your thinking is completely becoming zero. There are these really blessed moments when there's no thinking. And then you can take that with you into your busy life, because that clarity, if you don't become attached to things again, that clarity stays with you. But of course, it's not forever again, so we have to practice again, and then make it clear again, and then moment to moment, we do that. Okay? More questions? Sure. Let's hand the mic here.
Can I please not to taping? I'm kind of very shy this one.
See, this is beyond my control.
I just started practicing listening, and then I've been lost, but I don't know where I've been lost. And I'm very thirsty. I don't know. One person, that's fine. So I don't want to ask myself.
You don't want to.
Sorry?
You don't want to ask yourself.
I like to know what the problem is. I don't know.
So if you want to know what the problem is, then the question is very clear. What's the problem? Right?
Yeah, but still wondering all the time, every day.
Why? Because you escape. If you don't want to ask this question, but you want to know what the problem is, and you escape from the question. That's why I said earlier, great courage is necessary, because when you face the question, that's like fire. It burns all your ideas up. You thought about yourself as this and that kind of person, and you ask the question, all the problems appear, your self-image is broken. It's gone. Perishes. And it's good that it happens so. Because the self-image is an illusion. We put it together from our like and dislike mind, and we paint our mirror with our illusory self-image, so that anytime you look into the mirror, you see that image instead of yourself. But when you start to practice, this self-image is getting totally broken up. The painting just peels off, and then the real mirror comes up, and that's not pleasant, ladies and gentlemen. But it's worth it, because finally you return to reality. You return to the truth of your karma. It's not your true self yet, just seeing your karma. But that's a start. Like if you were here or watched the 10 ox herding pictures talk last time, the Shibudo, when you meet the cow or the ox, which part do you see? You see the back. And what color is it? Brown. So you see the not so nice part of your existence. That's why, have the courage to ask the question. You just said it. You want to know what the problem is. So what's the problem? And then first you'll see a big long line in your mind. So then ask yourself, what is the biggest problem? And then you put a hierarchy into this mass, into this kind of undifferentiated list of all those events and happenings and memories and judgments and all those things. So what is the problem? Then the big one comes up, and every other starts to depend on that. You take away the big one, the small ones also disappear. That's practicing, not just sitting as if you were following a statue. Ask your question inside. That's how your path begins. Right? Very good question. We have more? Any kind. Yes, Wejan, please.
I appreciate what I have a setting. I think so. Therefore, I am. We think opposite side. If I don't think, therefore, I am not. But great Buddha said, thought first. The noble, equal to taste. At the time, the first, the noble taste, the right view, and also thought first, right think. What's the difference? The Descartes think between Descartes think and great Buddha think.
So what's the difference between the saying that I think therefore I am, that's Descartes, and the Noble Eightfold Path of the Buddha, which is the deliverance from suffering, but rather the parallel is the cause of suffering, which is the Pratitya Samuppada, which is the 12 links in the chain of dependent origination, which starts with ignorance and ends up with existence. So what's the parallel? Not much. Because Descartes had a very different sense of existence. When he says, I think therefore I am, he didn't say, I think therefore I am born. He was not aware of the same thing as the Buddha was. Descartes was a philosopher. He looked at his life and he found that if he doesn't think, it's like being dead. So he said, I think, therefore I am. But if you are logical and you say, I don't think, therefore I am not, this sentence is not true. Otherwise, if you stop thinking, watch carefully, this moment you would die. But you didn't. You see? So, if somebody likes philosophy, then you can read Descartes, you can read Kant and Hegel and Fichte and then later on Gadamer and all these people. It's fine. It's kind of a good muscular exercise for your brain. I mean, it really takes a lot of stamina to read these people and actually survive. So it's very heavy load for your consciousness to follow this kind of speculative thinking. There was an interesting person in Europe, and he says, after Plato, there is no philosophy. And he was somehow tasting it right. So after Plato, we learned from Socrates, and Socrates asked the question about us, about I, and he was teaching that I don't know who I am. You know, Plato was his student. And after Plato, there's a big, big kind of line, and only Aristotle comes, and Aristotle is pure speculation. You know, when he talks about art, Aristotle, he still has a kind of shadow of the truth. But everything else is just pure logic. Even when he writes about something like A and B, it's totally narrow. I'm sorry. We talked about this earlier, that Aristotle says A equals A, B equals B, A doesn't equal B, B doesn't equal A. I said, excuse me? I mean, where are we? Are we in some kindergarten, you know, playing with cubes, or we try to grasp the true nature of our existence? I mean, if you want the liberation from this kind of thinking, then you should read Nagarjuna, the 14th patriarch. He is the high flyer of human philosophy. The 4 kinds of negation, don't want me to say that it's written. The 4 kinds of negation by Nagarjuna is amazing. It's like the ticket to liberation from conceptual thinking. Okay? So Descartes says, I think, therefore I am, and it's rather focused on his idea. What is thinking and what is existence? Nobody really can understand what he thought. Because you find another bunch of philosophers who are also talking about existence, and existence per Descartes, existence per Fichte, existence per Locke, existence per Nietzsche, they're all different. And many times they were fighting each other if they were living in the same time. They were writing letters to each other. Your existence and the explanation is 100% incorrect. Mail. Then it came back that, no. Your existence and your explanation is 100% incorrect. Boom, got back in the mail. So, what is this? That has very little to do with the cause of suffering, which you can actually experience. You have not moving mind, and suddenly your ignorance, your dualistic thinking clouds your mind. And then out of that comes a lot of things, mental formations, consciousness, etc., etc., etc. So, only verbally it appears to be parallel, but in kind of deeper sense, not much. Except that he was talking and thinking about our lives. He could never perceive death, what it is, you know, to not have a body, what it is to lose this body. They were never concerned with that in Europe, because they had an idea of creation, and after that they had an idea of redemption or going to hell. That was it. Nobody was allowed to deal with it. You know, you would be kind of classified as a witch, or as somebody pagan, or something, and then you would have trouble. Even such simple things as observing the stars was a big problem for Galileo Galilei. You know, it's such a simple thing. Observe the stellar objects, and he almost died for it. You know. Now talking about life and death outside the scriptures, the European scriptures, now that would have been really dangerous. So nobody really did that after a while. So we can compare various branches of thinking, various schools, but I would like to try this kind of rice cake, and then a little kimbap, and then a little chomugjang. That kind of comparison is much more tasty.
Wow.
Surprise? So, more questions? Yeah, right there. It's a question.
I have a big problem.
ordinary human life is samsara?
Is it different?
You tell me.
I don't know. You are looking at my number.
Don't hide behind the monk's casa. So what's the problem with life? Don't call it samsara, that's an Indian term. What's the problem?
I don't want to free from the samsara.
You don't want to be free from samsara.
Yeah, I like the samsara. Ups and downs and human life.
So then why is it a
If
problem?
I am a Buddha or Buddhist after I'm very busy to help other people.
Nobody asks you to do things that you don't want to do.
I have to give up humanity for enlightenment.
No. No. In fact, you have to become more human. More human to attain enlightenment.
Oh, really?
Yes, oh really.
I would like to be a good human beings and good women, good friends. Yeah, but I don't want to give up these things.
Nobody's asking you to give things up that you don't want to give up.
Thank you very much.
But you can give up your problems, right?
Yes.
Where do your problems come from?
Because when teachers and many practitioners said to me, you have too much attachment to samsara and ordinary human life, friendship.
I am not asking about the words of other teachers. I'm asking about your words. What's the problem? And if you see that, then where does it come from?
I think this is the problem.
So you have no problem, right?
Can I enjoy these things?
Of course.
Thank you very much.
How do you enjoy these things?
We have tears and smiles and friends and flowers, sky, everything.
One more step is necessary. That's all okay, but one more step is necessary.
What?
Share it with others.
Yes, 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 yes.
That's all.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. More questions? Back there. Hey, Mike.
Do I have to?
It's for the sake of posterity, so that your children's children's children could also learn from what you said.
How do we as an individuals, after many years of practicing in our own ways, can really truly say that we have reached or got enlightenment? I mean, they say like for singings, they go after Zen masters and they ask the question, do I really have enlightenment or something? But how do we as an individual know that? Is there such a feelings, or do we get, is there any checkpoint, or
Like Checkpoint Charlie?
or how do we really, can find out that we truly have that enlightenment?
What color is the ceiling here?
White?
Is that enough to see that it's white?
No.
Why not?
Well, it could have been different color before it was kind of painted white.
Because of this kind of mind, you want to know whether you are enlightened or not. But if you just see that the ceiling is white, that's enough. In other words, you cannot know this. Do you see the paradox here?
Yes.
The biggest hindrance to an enlightened state of consciousness is the notion of I. So if you say, I am enlightened, you are stating the impossible, because the I cannot get enlightenment. But you can see very clearly that the sky is blue and the trees are green. You can always see that if somebody is hungry, give them food and you do it. If somebody is thirsty and give them drink, you do it. But if you think about yourself, you make that self, which is the hindrance towards an enlightenment state. So it's a very big paradox. And if you read like Mangong Sunim's story, you know that he attained special abilities as he was practicing. He thought he was enlightened. He was running to Kyoko Sunim. Kyoko Sunim grabbed the stick, BAM! He just hit him so hard. You know, he just couldn't see anything. His head was bulging. His blood was spurting from his, skin. He because it was his thinking, and thinking is not enlightenment. Zero. Okay? So this is a really important point. If you think you got it, that moment you lost it. Alright? That's why in Zen we work with paradoxes. We don't work with systems, we don't work with symbols, we don't work with secret meaning. We work with one thing. No thinking. Or don't know. So if you have a completely clear state of don't know, there is no enlightenment in there. There is no Buddha in there. There is no samsara in there. But you see that the sky is blue, the trees are green, this desk is brown, and the ceiling is white. Now it may sound very simple, but next time, in a week, we talk about keeping yourself on the path. Now we talked about the beginning and various aspects of the mind, how we begin. So please, do not check yourself. Do not become Checkpoint Charlie for yourself. Okay? Otherwise, you have a mind which checks and another mind which is subject to checking. And that kind of duality is the abyss where you can fall in. So don't check yourself. Please. You do yourself and the others who are around you a big favor. Okay? Thank you. More questions? 1, 2. Quite a traffic here.
No one can make a meditative karma disappear. Then, how is it possible? By chanting CASN BELS, we are saved from suffering. For example, by chanting, who is wanting a good son, he will have a good son to translate. How is it possible by chanting CASN BELS? You can save it from suffering.
You said good son, like somebody wants to have a good son. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Like a nice child?
Yes.
That's what you meant. So that's also two questions. One is about Mahakashyapa and taking the little Kapila kingdom up to Tushita heaven to save it from a war. And then when it didn't work, then the Buddha said no one can make merit decisions. So this is very important. Now let us give yourself a test. Hold out your right arm like this, kind of loose. Good. Can you raise your arm? Yeah. Can you lower your arm? Great. So you have control over your arm. If you want to take a weapon into your hands, can you do that? If you want to let go of that weapon, can you do that? Okay. So the Kapila kingdom did not do that, so it was devastated by a war. From the outside, not even the biggest magic can control somebody else's merited karma. That's why Magdalayana was frustrated, because he tried to save some kingdom or some family member, some individual from their karma. But you cannot. The person who is responsible has to do that. Okay? So if a head of a state is stupid enough to go to war, then no matter what kind of magicians you have on earth, and he makes up his mind to go to war, the whole state goes to war. It's a very sensitive issue. But if that mind chooses not to do that, then that karma can be avoided. But nothing external can change that. That's the teaching in Magdalena's story. Now, you can inspire people, and that's why chanting CASN BELS is so important. Have you visited Namhedo Boriyam? Okay. How long have you stayed there?
2 hours.
2 hours. Try to convince people who are working there that you could stay there like for a week and spend some holiday time over there. They chant CASN BELS there for the last couple of 100 years for sure, non-stop. it's so strong that it melts you. You go in there, and I went with Bulchanim, some international Buddhists, many Hungarians, and I was up there several times. That energy just melts your heart. Some people who were in the Poptan for the first time, you know, they started to just cry. Not this big sobbing, just started tears coming out of their eyes. It's so strong. Other strong practicing places in Korea have the same effect, not just that one. But that's a very much kind of respected and revered place of Kwansan Bosal energy. And if you experience that, how could you do harm to other people later? So that's why we can inspire people by the experience of compassion, that their dualistic consciousness will disappear. Because that's one of those places, you know, Boryan, where it can happen. So you chant Kwansan Bosal for all beings, that's great. But if they themselves can experience that, then that's the guarantee that their compassion mind will always be stronger than their dualistic consciousness. And then, if they have this true experience that we are all sharing the same substance, therefore we are all interconnected, then all these dualities will disappear. But if somebody doesn't go through that, some kind of purification inside, then all these opposites can happen again, can make wars again, can make suffering again. So chanting Kwansan Bosal is very important, because that floods the world with the energy of compassion. It inspires people. But it doesn't take their karma away unless they themselves do so. Do you see the parallel? You see how it's connected? It's very important to chant Kwansan Bosal. But that doesn't change human karma right away. It just gives the energy, it gives the inspiration, it gives the example. Then people have to do it by themselves. Alright? Very good question. Next.
I don't know how to use thinking correctly. And when we supposed to when we can use thinking or when we can stop thinking, I want to distinguish the okay, this time is use thinking, or okay, this time is stop thinking and stay before thinking and what's going on, awareing what's going on.
Which university do you go to?
And I already graduated when I was
so which one was that? Which university made you so smart? Talk to me.
Seoul National University.
Congratulations. So, the first question you should ask yourself when you open your mouth, when you start to talk, that what you say is worth more than the silence that you are about to break. So if what you say is more valuable than the silence that you are about to break, then say it. If not, stay quiet. It's not just about you, it's about everyone. And the same applies to thinking. Thinking is like an animal, it's like a dog. Okay? So you give some good job to that thinking, it can do it. It pretty much can do anything. If you work hard with your mind, you know how to do that. Your thinking can invent another rocket to go to the moon, no problem. But what is the use? So the use should be determined by your direction, where you go with your thinking. Okay. So then the function of your thinking will be also very clear. Do it or not do it. Most of the time, when we begin our thinking process, we know the result. We just haven't gotten there. The question is, do we want that result? Do we want to go that way? And if yes, then apply your thinking very disciplined, very dutiful, very human and humble way. It's fine. Smart doesn't mean that you are smarter than the universe. Okay? I'm not dying of thirst, I'm fine, thank you. So, It's really important to see the thinking process. And don't check your thinking. So thinking cannot see thinking. But this clear mirror consciousness, which is before thinking, can perceive everything. It can perceive your thoughts, the object of your thinking, the result of your thinking, everything. So look inside and see your thinking in this mirror. That tells you clearly, do it or not do it. And just one piece of advice. Don't mix your thinking with your emotions. We already talked about it before. But when a smart person mixes his thinking with his emotions, then your girlfriend has a hard time. So don't do that. Okay? So, bright and young gentlemen, life is before you. Great. So if you perceive how to use your smart consciousness, you know, knowledge is power. It's really important. If you do that, this kind of perception, choosing the direction, using your thinking when you really have to, and keeping it in good condition, and not using it when you don't have to or you shouldn't, you can help other people a great deal. So wonderful, you have this instrument, use it in the best possible way. Only your perception, your clear insight can teach you how. And, as I have said earlier, your mistakes. So welcome to the world. You're welcome. More questions? You can't run out of juice so soon. Actually, we have space for 2 more questions and that's it for today. If you have any, think fast, think now, think different. Yeah, Hosan. I'm sorry, Mike, you say. So, Mike necessary. Struggling and taming at the same time. First, struggle. And then when you are stronger than the ox, then you can tame it. You're welcome. This is a really important point. Bosanim apparently listened to the Shibudo, the 10 ox herding pictures, you know, lecture series very carefully. And you remember that on picture 2 or 3, there is a very strong rope. And with that rope around the neck of the ox, you start to struggle and you really push and pull. Because the ox want to take you, in some pictures, down to the marshes or up the mountain. Basically, it's always somewhere off the cliff. That's your karma. And when you start practicing, your karma can really give you a hard time. Some really bad surprises. And that's where formal practice and the energy that you sincerely and regularly put into practicing can be a lifesaver. Not just for you, for your environment too. So, after you have established some clear basis, some foundation for practicing, then you can tame your karma. Not before. Okay? It doesn't mean that you have to be tough on yourself all the time. But don't be fooled by your own illusions. Don't be deceived by your own thoughts, feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness.
I'm asking for holiness, or sky guide holiness.
Wonderful. Why not? You make mistake anyway. Don't worry. It's fine. Little mistake, little correction. Big mistake, big correction. Alright? We open mouth, already mistake. So why not relax and really be yourself? And then you can really walk on the path. You can really help other people. And when you guide these tourists, answer the questions to the extent that you really trust yourself that you can. And those questions that they ask and you wouldn't, or you feel you shouldn't answer, relegate it to someone else. They can ask someone else. Like somebody stops me on Chomnogu and asks, how do I get to Mapogu? I know where's Mapogu, but I cannot tell them how to get there. I don't know the bus numbers because they renumbered the buses a few years ago. There are many, many new subway lines always appearing, which I'm very happy for. So I'll ask the person to ask a local, and then they can definitely get there. So it's like that. What you feel you can answer, answer that. What not, no problem, it's not your area. Okay. Last question, ladies and gentlemen.
Relating to that's two main streams. There is one is a Yogacara tradition and the Prajna tradition. And I'd like to know the two different streams in Buddhism and the differences between in simple and no.
Yogacara is eating kimbap with chopsticks. The Prajna schools is using a fork to get the kimbap. Any other last questions? You forgot the Samkhya and the Nyaya Vaisheshika, error 4. Don't worry.
Okay.
Anyone else? Yeah, back there. Micah.
I mean, I'm still thinking about this enlightenment thing, but I mean, how can we prevent from making mistakes of someone like they say they have reached enlightenment and saying they make their own religion or they have their followers. I mean, for example, in Jirisan, there are so many like saying they are the ones that they have reached enlightenment, like Tosa or Toin. They grew like beards and all that stuff. I mean, then why are they making that kind of mistake? So then, is that some kind of like spiritual release that they have felt, or I mean, or I would really like to know.
Okay. Can you take off your hat?
Oh my gosh! Oh my god! Oh. Do I have
Yes
to?
or no? I'm asking, yes or no?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I mean,
No, don't do that.
okay.
Can you take off someone else's hat?
No.
So how would you prevent those people from professing that they are enlightened? Let them do what they really believe in. If they really believe in themselves as Buddhas and they are not shy of saying it and putting it on posters and making billboards out of it, it's their karma. It's their karma. Don't touch that. You want to follow, you follow. You don't want to follow, you go somewhere else. But you take care of your own consciousness. You take care of your own mind. You take care of your own hat. Alright? So this is really important. If your previous question referred to checking yourself, now the next question refers to checking others. It's equally mistaken. In Korea, we have this beautiful teaching of situation, relationship, and function. So if you enter a situation, you must keep correct relationship and you must have correct function. So if you do not want to enter a situation because you would keep a bad relationship, because you have some opinion, you have some problem with that person or persons, and you don't want to take part in that function, do not enter. Do not create that situation for yourself. You smell, I don't want to stay here. Boom, go away. but don't check them. It's negative company. Seeing clearly is not the same as checking. I wanted a teacher where the words covered the action. I got it. It was Sung Sansu. His teaching was his life. That was all that mattered. I didn't know about this kind of Buddhism, that kind of Buddhism. I was aware of some Mahayana schools, but I was deeply looking for a teacher whom I can believe. And his practice is his life. And his life is about helping other people, including me. And he displayed that in the first half an hour when I saw him live in Budapest, 1991, April. So he became my teacher. So how do you choose your teacher? Don't check, observe. And if you feel the inyon, this inescapable clear bond, then you don't think. That's why I'm giving you the example. You don't think about who is your teacher. You feel that there's this inescapable clear bond, and no matter what he wants me to do, the direction is so clear that I believe him, I follow him, I try to follow his instructions. Then you're a true student. Doesn't mean you become blind, doesn't mean you become a machine, doesn't mean that you lose anything of your human nature. But don't check, don't make, don't hold, don't attach, and don't want. You want enlightenment, never get it. Okay? So we already have this Buddha nature, so what do we really want? We want to be clear, and that's very human. That's why we start on the path. We want to take away suffering, first ours, and then maybe others also. And that's why we start on the path. So that's clear. We want that. But when you talk about awakening and you want it, it's like putting it as far from you as you possibly can, just by this wanting mind. And the Chinese have this deep wisdom. How do you notice an ox on which you are already sitting? Repeat. How do you notice an ox on which you are already sitting? That's our dilemma. So take away the barrier between you and the ox. Take away the karma, which is the barrier between your sense of being and the enlightened state. And when you take that karma away, you become complete. You become one. Not sliced up by your dualistic thinking. And not sliced up by any sensory perceptions that this world or others give you. So I hope that from time to time we can share this Dharma again, and we all not just start on the path but continue on the path. And our personal example, just as we live your lives, will be inspiring others to do that and ask the right question and choose the right direction.